Wright review of the Union Budget 2023. This year, the Finance Minister started the speech by reinforcing the India growth story, highlighting how India grew at 7% last fiscal and the Indian economy has increased in size from being the 10th to the 5th most expensive in the last 9 years. The budget theme was to reinforce India's growth and recover position in the global economy.
There were two major announcements in this year's budget. The first one being the enormous increase in the Capex spending. The government is now going to spend 33% more on capital expenditure in this budget. And the second major announcement was the rationalization of the tax regime. In the new regime of income tax, what the government has said is that income up to 7 lakh will be tax exempt now instead of the previous limit of 5 lakh. And the idea here is that the government wants to incentivize more people to shift into the new tax regime.
The Finance Minister broke up her focus into 7 key areas, which included developments, reaching the last mile, infrastructure and investment, unleashing the potential, green growth, youth power and finance.
Yes, budget received a huge welcome from the market as well as from the analyst community. A lot of people have rated this budget highly on a couple of things. We do need a lot of infrastructure spending for our country, which is emerging and growing. And secondly, we did not want the government to pressure the balance sheet by increasing the fiscal deficit. So that the government delivered on both of these fronts and received good ratings. But the markets gave up those gains and were under tremendous pressure because of other broader risks that are happening in the market due to certain stock-specific scenarios. The implications of the different changes are, being widely debated. Obviously, the infrastructure spending is most welcome by the country, but how the personal tax changes will impact the market is something that people are still evaluating. So, in this video, we will go through the impact of the different moves that the government made in this budget.
The first impact was on infrastructure. The most significant announcement was an increase in the total capital investment outlay by 33% to 10 lakh crore, making effective Capex 13.7 lakh crore, forming 4.5% of the GDP. This is far above our expectations of 3.5% and should boost the infrastructure, capital, foods, cement, logistics and railways. Railway outlay was the highest ever at 2.4 lakh crore. Critical projects for urban development and transport enhancements were announced. Nitya Infra jumped on this news. Equity indices welcomed the infrastructure spending announcements. But beyond yields climbed 2 basis points to 7.38% since the Finance Minister announced the hike in Capex outlay. The railway stocks had a muted reaction, maybe because of the profit booking with Jindal Steel, Dixon and other infrastructure-linked stocks cheering the news the most.
Talking about the second big announcement, which is the change in the personal income tax regime. So if you watched the budget, you saw that the biggest cheer that we got was on the changes that were announced in the personal income tax regime. But this is something that we need to understand in depth, right? So right now in our country, we follow an old tax regime and a new tax regime has also been introduced. What's the difference between these two tax regimes is that in the old tax regime, you could claim exemptions for your insurance, exemptions for your housing loan, and a number of other exemptions under the ATC, ATD, and other categories. In the new tax regimes, all those exemptions are gone, but in this budget, that rationalization has been done so that the exemption limit has increased and the rates for the various slabs in the new regime have gone down. So when the announcement happened, people cheered it thinking that, they're going to save more tax. But if you try to understand the fine print, what you will see is that a typical middle class, household who earns under 20 lakh rupees will end up saving more in the old tax regime because, they could make their insurance, their ELSS funds, their housing loans and a number of other things tax exempt in that regime, where in the new regime, they cannot claim those exemptions. But for the ultra rich, people who are earning more than 20 lakh rupees, the government has reduced the surcharge on the high net worth individuals from 37% to 25%, which will incentivize the high net worth individuals to move into the new tax regime. So what will be the implications of these changes? We can see that the government is nudging everyone to move into the new regime. By default, on the income tax side, if you go and try to file your tax, you will be filing the tax under the new regime. So what happens in the new regime? In the new regime, we are taking away the forced investments or the forced insurance that people used to do just to save taxes, right? People used to buy a house only with the reason that the loan that they're servicing will help them in their taxation. So in the new regime, all those foundations are gone. You can save on what you want, you can invest in what you want, and you can consume what you want. You don't need to necessarily do these investments to get a tax benefit out of it, which will make sure that people will not invest into ELSS fund. Instead, they might go into other stock specific funds or stock specific investments. Similarly, on the insurance side, people might not do very expensive insurance. They might go into a term insurance or a simpler insurance based on what they actually need. And also on the housing front, people might not buy a big house just so that they can claim the taxation benefit, but instead they will go into buy when they need, or maybe rent more and invest into the stock market, the bond market, or even the REIT and other instruments. So these are the big changes that have been announced in the taxation, and these will have long-term implications. Obviously, there is no rush for you to shift into the new regime right now. And if you're saving more in the old regime, then you can stay in the old regime. But what we think is that over the course of the next few years, the government will try to shift more and more people into the new regime and try to let go of the old regime. So I think this is the journey that we're seeing, and we'll see the different sectors in the market get impacted by it. The insurance sector will get impacted because people will not do insurance to claim the benefit. The pension funds will get impacted because people will not invest in NPS because they can't claim that. ELSS that people used to do in mutual funds, that might get impacted. Similarly, housing loan market might get impacted. You would see asset management companies, you would see your NBFCs, you could see all these getting impacted because people are not using them for the mandatory tax exemption that you could sort of get. So that could be a change that would happen. But the organic investment, now you can actually choose to invest when you like to do. You can choose those instruments that you think are actually interesting, right? Instead of going into a vehicle that could give you a tax benefit. So that comes into force, and also because you would not put that money into a pension fund and insurance fund instead of putting it, and instead you will have it in your bank account. So you might actually end up spending more on consumption, you might end up spending more on travel, etc. So what that would mean that some of the asset management companies, some of the insurance companies, some of the housing finance companies might get impacted as the new regime comes into force. But on the other hand, consumption sectors, travel sectors might actually end up gaining because of this. But obviously, this is a long-term process that will happen over the course of the next few years.
Next is the New India sectors. More than 39,000 compliances have been reduced to enhance the ease of doing business, and over 3,400 legal provisions have been decriminalized. The union government has smartly used settlement schemes, often open-ended, to garner additional revenues and resolve long-pending tax and contractual disputes. The government has also stated its intent to review and rationalize existing compliances with public participation. These moves would make India get a better ranking in the ease of doing business rankings, welcome foreign industries looking to move out of China, and make India a beneficiary of the China Plus One incentive. Custom duty support for mobile manufacturing components, televisions, electrical chimneys, and chemical industries, especially ethanol blending, were announced. Custom duty SOPs for synthetic materials were also announced. This reinforces the incentives for the new India industries and benefits stocks like Blue Star, 5 industries, etc.
The government of India has always had a supreme focus on sustainability and green energy. And in this budget as well, they continue to have that focus. The FM announced 35,000 crores of priority capital investment into energy transition and reiterated that India wants to become net zero carbon emission by 2070. An additional 19,700 crores was allocated towards government's green hydrogen mission. The FM said that they want to target 5 million ton target for green hydrogen by 2030. The government is supporting setting up of battery energy storage, and they're adding to the green energy credit program, which will be notified under the Environmental Protection Act. So obviously, stocks in the renewable sector cheered this move. Budget seems to be a great time for the renewable energy sector because there's always a focus on this sector in the Indian budget. And we did see on the budget day that the stocks that are in the renewable energy sector, especially the battery makers like Amara Raja Battery and Exide Energy, sort of cheered this. We have a small case which is our innovation small case that focuses on the EV sector along with the digital sectors, and then we have the New India small case which focuses on these sectors where the government is providing incentives. It includes a lot of these green energy stocks. So both of these small cases came into focus on the budget day and saw a big up move.
Next, we have the financial sector. She discussed a comprehensive review of existing regulations for the financial sector and focused on including private sector contributions to regulatory reviews. No capitalization of the banking sector was announced, or the capital tax structure changes were announced. The NSE PSU banks received no mention, and the PSU bank index is under pressure, down to 2.84%, even as the Nifty bank index is up 0.7%. The insurance sector stocks like SBI Life, HDFC Life, or GICRE took a big hit as the finance minister proposes to remove tax-free status on certain insurance policies with premium above Rs 5 lakh. The asset management sector and mutual funds, on the other hand, would welcome this move as those funds could move to mutual funds or ELSS. The banking sector has welcomed the moves to expand credit in the economy and acknowledgement that no further capitalization is needed for the Indian banks, which already have high asset quality. Chola Finance, M&M Finance were big gainers in the financial services space, and among private banks, ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank gained big.
If you watch the stock movement on the budget day, you would have seen that India Hotels ended up being the most bought stock or the most highest return giving stock on that day. The tourism and travel sector received a lot of focus from the government as the Indian economy is recovering from the pandemic. The travel sector has really struggled, and the government has continued to put their focus on that sector. In the budget, there was a new regulation or the new policy announced where for overseas travelers of high value, who are spending more than 50 lakh on their travel, the tax collected at source would increase from 5% to 20%. Right? What that means is that the Indian hotel industry will go through a transition where they might end up prioritizing a lot of domestic travelers, or they might end up changing their packages so that they split it into smaller chunks so that they can charge more money from India instead of from the overseas countries. So this was a very interesting thing that happened in the travel and tourism sectors, and the sector obviously has been in focus since the last year. It has been seeing tremendous growth, and it continues to see that as well.
This was all in terms of the Wright review of the Union Budget 2023. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the Wright YouTube channel. We will be back with many more such insights and reviews. Till then, click on the bell icon to stay tuned for more such amazing Wright updates, and happy investing.